Hi! In today's episode of Yoga Rebels, we're going to talk about how the Jedi and the Vulcans meditate. Oh, his poor jaw. Oh, God. It's horrific. Oh, your jaw is out of socket. Oh, God. You poor guy. Okay. There, I guess. All right. Okay. So, Lauren got a job. And instead of giving us a break or whatever, I decided that I was going to go ahead and try to do an episode without her. So I've got Jack here. Jack is my skeleton here at the studio. He likes Jedi as well. Thus, he's drinking out of his Yoda mug. So yeah, I just needed to not feel like I was alone in this video. But I was thinking about what is it that I really feel passionate about. I was thinking about Star Trek. So, I can't remember who I admitted it to, but I think that there's a small part of me, maybe a bigger part than I want to admit, that really loves Spock more than Yoda. There's something about, so I love Vulcans. I really love Spock, and I love all of the Vulcans that they have that are the main characters on the various Star Trek ships. So the Vulcans that are actually part of Starfleet. I love Tuvok. It took me a while to get used to T'Pol, but I really like T'Pol. And yeah, and of course I love Spock. So one of the things that I really love about the Vulcans is, so for those of you who aren't entirely familiar with their sort of ancestry, is they come from the race of the Romulans. And so I was talking with Aaron about this last night. I'm pretty sure that this was something that was shared with us, or that we learned in the movies from like Spock. Or no, I'm sorry, not Spock, but Spock told us that, but I think it was in like the movies that have Kirk and so forth. So, the original movies. And one of the differences between the Romulans and the Vulcans is that the Vulcans work really hard to control their emotions. So it's not at all that they are emotionless. As we see when we first meet Spock in the beginning of the original series, we think that he just has his shit completely together and doesn't fly off into a rage ever. But the thing is, and this is where, I guess I do have somewhat of a concern about the Vulcans, that, this is, so some of their beliefs are truly against what we learn in like Buddhism or in yogic philosophy, is you're not trying to avoid something. And the act of meditation, at least what we practice in yoga or other kinds of, human meditation, is that we're told, we're asked to not push things away. That was one of the first things that I learned. So my first meditation teacher was Juan, and I was going through some really hard times because my mom was dying, and I don't know if I think I shared this in one of our last episodes, like the stress of my mom dying, like I didn't want to admit how bad that was. And so I was actually drinking a lot. My body hurt, my mind couldn't stop. Everything was really stressful to me. And so to keep myself from going down the path of constantly drinking bottles of wine, it wasn't to the point of alcoholism, but it was not good. I was numbing by drinking, obviously. And so I asked Juan to help me learn how to meditate. First couple times, he was just teaching me the simple techniques. Notice your breath, stay in the present. And I thought I was doing really well because one of the things that I was sort of envisioning and visualizing was myself literally standing, like if you imagine sort of the image of Moses parting the Red Sea, that's almost the exact image, except I wasn't in like a toga. But I imagined myself like staving off my thoughts like Moses holding the water back. And I remember coming to a session with Juan and I was like, well, this is what I'm thinking. And I thought, yeah, this is exactly what I should be doing. I'm holding it back. And he's like, no, Burg. And he's got a Spanish accent, which I cannot do. But he's like, that's not at all what you're trying to accomplish. So I'm like, oh shit. Okay. Well, let's circle back around, start over again. So, and then upon further study and practice, and using different meditation styles and techniques, I realized, there was a lot of effort that I was putting into pushing away or avoiding thoughts and emotions and feelings. Feelings meaning like tactile feelings. And so this is where I kind of feel bad for the Vulcans, or I guess I just disagree with their whole entire culture, I guess, because their meditation practice and the way that they're raised is to avoid certain emotions, anger, sexual pleasure, things like that. And so in some episodes of Star Trek, we see that the Vulcans use meditation to, like, if you're not too familiar with Star Trek, or the Vulcans, they go through what they call Pon farr. I think it's like every 7 years or something like that. I can't remember exactly. I should have researched that. But Pon farr is basically when it's time for them to mate. And so like they just have all the hormones. I mean, think of like the most insane teenager ever, like on all the hormones. And so if you're stuck out in the middle of deep space and you can't get back to your home planet to practice Pon farr and mate like crazy, then you've got to meditate to keep your emotions in check. Which doesn't always work, as we see in some episodes of Star Trek. And so, I do have, I feel bad about that. I feel bad for the Vulcans that they have to avoid this part of their nature and try to suppress it. As we know, Spock is half human. And so, arguably he may have a harder time at suppressing emotion. He probably has, I think we learned that he has different kinds of emotions. But his mother, depending on the universe that you follow, in the new movies, his mother is Winona Ryder, who I think is a great human mother to have. She was trying to encourage him to actually embrace those emotions and those feelings and things like that. And I mean, because those are the things that make us human. And, one of the aspects of yoga that we practice and in kind of in a meditation kind of form is not necessarily calling anything good or bad. When you have an emotion, it's not a good or bad emotion. Humans label things good and bad. Things aren't inherently good or bad, evil or not evil. It's what you do with a thing that we would then define as good or bad. So feeling anger, that's natural. If somebody, wrongs you in some way, hurts you, anger is a rational response, but it's how far you take it to the extreme. It's what you do with that anger that really defines how well you are managing your emotions and your responses. The saying that you can't control life, but you can control your response to life, your reaction to things. And that's truly what all of this is. So, meditating in order to keep yourself from flying off the handle, finding that balance. I mean, one of the things that I've learned from my own meditation practice is breathing, which I realized I hadn't really been doing this whole time I've been talking. But allowing yourself to breathe and stay in the present and not necessarily keep dredging up the thing that just happened that pissed you off or sent you into a rage, and recognizing, taking a moment, taking a step back to separate yourself from the thing for a second. You're not avoiding it, but you're just not plowing head on into whatever the thing is. I guess perfect timing for somebody racing down the street. But you're allowing yourself to maybe take a moment and say, okay, I don't need to hurt this person back. And perhaps if it's a stranger, or even if it's somebody you know, taking a moment to think about what caused them to say that thing, to do that thing. And this isn't rolling over and letting somebody just step all over you and letting somebody treat you badly. That's not at all what this is. But it's not, you do not have to meet like with like. You know what I mean? You don't have to respond back with the same amount of force and anger and hatred or whatever it is that the person came at you with. So back in the day when I worked in an office and worked in healthcare IT support, one of the things that we were taught in sort of management training or support training is to match somebody's level of urgency or whatever. So if somebody calls you with a problem, you're not trying to meet their frustration, but recognize that they see this thing as important. And so you should sort of lift up your emotional response just a scotch to sort of match, to some extent, the level of importance that they're putting to something. So for example, working in healthcare, a doctor would call and say, well, I can't do this with my computer. And then I'd be like, oh my gosh, okay, so let's work on this. So recognizing that they feel it's important and letting them know that I feel it's important. However, I've had plenty of times people call me. I mean, working in support, I've had so many people call me and swear at me. I've been treated worse than a human really should be, verbally abused by clients. Not anymore. I have lovely clients now. But working hard to not meet them back with the amount of vile language that they were giving me, so that they can see I'm a human and I recognize that they have something that is important and I'm happy to help them, but they don't need to treat me like that. So none of this implies, when you're working on finding balance and moderation in your emotional state, this isn't to say that you just let somebody walk over you, because you can have somebody come up to you and be like, call you all the swear words in the book, because you moved your grocery cart in front of theirs when you were looking at the peanut butter. You can be like, hey, you know what? You didn't need to call me that. I'll move my cart. I apologize. However, sort of mediating a problem there. So anyway, there are a lot of different meditation techniques that I've seen in Vulcans throughout the series. Different ways that they would position their bodies, the way that they would sit. Frequently you would see, I think, Tuvok used a candle frequently and would focus on a candle. And there were times when I would see them meditating using what I'm going to call a mudra. And I don't know that they had any name for this that I'm aware of. Maybe in some of the canon books or something they do. But using your hands like this as either, you're just holding your hands like this or it's a focal point. There actually are hand mudras in yoga where you're holding the fingertips up to your third eye. And that's said to be extremely powerful form of connection when you're meditating. So the Vulcans had all sorts of different techniques for when they meditated. And of course, I can't talk about meditation without bringing up the Jedi. I can't, and maybe if somebody knows maybe there were some Sith that I've seen meditate. I'm trying to think if I've seen Darth Maul meditating. I feel like maybe. But obviously there are plenty of examples of the Jedi meditating. And honestly, one of my favorite Jedi is Kanan from the Rebels. I mean, of course, I'm going to love the Rebels. But I really love Kanan Jarrus. And when he would meditate, frequently he would kneel. And he didn't do much. Like he would just, close his eyes, lower his head. And so we saw him frequently meditating. We saw him in the Jedi temples. He'd go out, someplace in whatever planet they were on and just take a moment. And what the Jedi are typically, at least what they're saying in the movies and in the books that they're doing during their meditation, is they're becoming still and they're stilling their mind in order to connect with the Force. And so we even, one of the scenes that I do like in Last Jedi is when Luke is working with Rey and trying to get her to connect with the Force, which as of yet, at that point in the movie, or at this point in any of the movies, really, she hadn't connected with the Force much. She knows about it. It's sort of like coming and going, and all of her interactions with Kylo Ren, she clearly has a capability to use the Force. It just hadn't been honed. And so that was part of what Luke was to be doing when they were on the island. So he has her, the scene where she's touching the ground and he's asking her to go deeper and get connected with the Force, and sense and notice what she feels. And there is that moment of sort of levity, and he slaps her with the leaf or the grass or whatever it is. But then we see where like the rocks are moving and so forth. And so we know that she's making a connection. And to the point where the Jedi use their form of meditation and connection with the Force in order to use like telekinesis, which they don't use these terms, telekinesis and levitation, but that's what we're doing. We have words for those things. I've never heard them use any kind of words for that. Other than they have like Jedi mind tricks, which is probably a form of telepathy or something. And so in part of the training is being able to move big rocks, right? And so we see Luke trying to move his plane out of the water and gives up and says he can't because it's too big. And that leads to Yoda telling him the whole thing. It's because of this. It's because you can't, that you never will. And so, Yoda lifts the X-Wing out of the water by meditating and by connecting with the Force in order to lift this piece of matter out of the water. And so, the Jedi go a little bit, I don't want to say that they go a little bit deeper. I mean, I guess arguably, the Vulcans are in a constant state of meditation if they have to be controlling their emotions at all times. And maybe at some point they get to a place where they're just always able to control their emotions. Maybe it just becomes a state of being, perhaps, where it doesn't take any effort. Maybe perhaps it's more in times of pon farr, which probably makes sense, where they have to control their emotions a little bit more, and they're probably in meditation a little bit deeper. But when the Jedi and people who are force sensitive, you would have to practice some form of meditation in order to have better control over the force and being one with the force. Because, I mean, it's with great power comes great responsibility. This is a thing that we know. And so if you have the ability, and this is arguably something that maybe humans, we don't really have a full concept of this, because, I mean, I'll be honest, like, I believe in all sorts of things. I do believe that there is that we probably just haven't used our minds enough in order to make a mind-matter connection. And in fact, that's one of the things that I talk about in the book that I'm writing. I'm still working through Black Unicorn. But the people in my universe that I'm writing, they have harnessed the ability, their mental ability to control matter with their minds. Because if you go through, like, say, one form of yoga is tantric yoga, and one of the philosophies, the overriding concepts of tantra is that we are all one organism. And if that's the case, if we are all one thing, which from a biological standpoint, of course, that makes sense, right? I mean, we're all in this biosphere. We're all part of this living organism on Earth, and we're all connected. And so if that's the case, then why shouldn't I be able to use my mind? Because I use my mind right now to move my arm, my mind sends signals to my hands to move and do things before I even realize that I'm doing it. I don't have to think to move my hand. It's just natural. So why wouldn't I be able to, say, at some point, have this connection, this mind connection with all of the materials, all of the atoms and molecules between here and the camera, for instance, and be able to move the camera closer with my mind, to adjust it, to maybe zoom in. Honestly, I believe that there is a possibility of being able to do that kind of thing. Just because we can't doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Just because you can't see something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So anyway, I'll be very honest. Many times when I'm sitting down to meditate, I do think of Kanan from Rebels, and I sort of emulate that, because I do very much. I want to be a Jedi. I want to, I like sort of the romance of that lifestyle. It doesn't seem to be quite as austere as, like, Buddhism. There's a little bit more excitement in it. Although, have we ever seen the living quarters of any Jedi? I don't know that we have. Jack, do you know? He's useless. I mean, I think he's a Star Wars fan, but I don't really know. So anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts about, are there other characters in movies? Are there any other sort of like comic book characters or something like that have a form of meditation that you think is kind of interesting? And have you ever tried it? So I know that there are forms of meditation that are discussed in, I think in the Wheel of Time books. I may be wrong about that. Robert Jordan. I just really, I emulate sometimes both the Vulcans. So I've done this kind of a meditation, and I really do like that. Sitting here and focusing. And so to sort of throw some yoga into this as well, frequently when we use hand mudras, most of the time the mudras have an energetic purpose. So the fingers on your hands correspond to different elements. This is fire, and I remember that because this is how you light a lighter. This is air, testing the air. The middle finger is space, or it's ether, because it's the one finger that points straight up. That's how I remember that. And then the ring finger is earth. It's the one finger that when it's bent, it points straight down. And then the pinky finger, this is water, thinking about how you drink tea. So that's how I remember that. So frequently when you're doing certain hand mudra, you're connecting certain elements, but also there are, different pressure points in your palms that you're sort of activating as well, that correspond to certain nerves that travel up to various parts of your brain. But then also sometimes a mudra is simply giving yourself something to do to stay connected. And so if you're doing a mudra where you're putting a little bit of pressure on your fingers, or even doing something like this may help to keep you aligned and present and focused. It gives you something to focus on. That's a lot of times what we're doing with mudras. Also, again, I said that I've seen some of the Vulcans meditating using a candle. It gives you something to focus on. And if you want to try to practice the force in trying to connect with the candle and make it go bigger or something like that, see what happens. I like to practice with a candle and try to still my breath enough that it does not move the candle. So that's been a practice that I've done. And that's kind of neat when it's darker out. It's also really nice and calming for your eyes. One of the a kriya, a sort of cleansing exercise for your body, is looking at a candle, and that's said to clean your eyes and to clean your vision. It's just a gentle thing to do for your eyes. And I would argue that probably is good, especially for those of us who are sitting looking at a computer screen all day long. Do you know of any other characters in any other sort of movie or series that has a form of meditation? I'd love to know more about those. Do you think of anybody's style when you're sitting to meditate? Do you think of a monk? Do you think of a Vulcan and so forth? I'd be really interested to know that. Maybe I'm the only one. I'm okay with that. Now, if you do not have a meditation practice, I highly recommend it. No, you're not trying to push things aside. What you're trying to do is find balance in your mind and balance in your emotions, so that it keeps you resilient. When you have good balance, and think of this from both a physical standpoint, but also perhaps a mental or emotional standpoint, when you have balance, that means you are able to respond quicker and with more ease and grace to whatever life throws at you. So think about, like, if you're nimble on your feet, if you have good balance physically, then when you are, something flies at you, or if, there's something that is trying to destabilize you, then you're able to recover quicker and not fall over. And so the same thing mentally. If you have a more stable mind and emotional state, then when somebody does come up to you, either way, either with a lot of anger, or the people who have a lot of like high energy, and so I visualize when I feel the most balanced, I feel like I have a lot of space around me. I have a lot of space in my breath and sort of in my mind. That's what I imagine. And when you have space, it gives you room, mental room to move, physical room to move. So that's kind of what I visualize. And when there's somebody who has a lot of energy, either positive energy or negative or angry energy, then I feel like when I've been meditating and I have balance and space, then I'm able to keep level and all of those things, and not swing in one direction or the other, or unbalance myself. So, Yeah, so this was an attempt to have a discussion without Lauren. I guess all that's left is what we always say. Okay, well, that was awkward. Keep the rebellion alive.